विभागिनी व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. Om Shanti 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 Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Now, we were discussing a very interesting set of slokas. And what are these slokas about? We are trying to understand two critical things which, in a way, constitute the crux of Vedantic teaching. What is it? That Brahman is one, undivided, is not visible to the naked eyes, to our sense organs. The only way we can be sure of it is by meditating on the Upanishadic insights available in the texts. And then we can make use of logic, we can make use of everyday experience, but through our sense organs, through the sense experience that we have in everyday life, we can never ascertain what is Swarupa of Brahman. And that is one of the reasons as to why we are engaging ourselves in the study of the Shastras. We are entering into which otherwise may appear to be a little difficult, abstract kind of a thing. Now, in the verse number 58, the author is explaining to us, Nirang se pyang samaropya. Brahman is actually, now what are the context in which this sloka is coming, which we discussed yesterday? Brahma is Niravayava, not Savayava. It doesn't have any parts. But the question which the student is raising is whether Maya, the relationship in Maya, it's an imaginary relationship, whether Maya covers whole of Brahman or part of Brahman. If it covers whole of Brahman, then you can never have access to Suddha Brahman because it is all the time covered up with Maya. Right? Unlike a rope which is covered with the pratiti of snake, appearance of snake, if the rope is 6 feet, the snake will also look like 6 feet. In case of Brahman and Maya, the texts are hinting that the Maya covers up only one part of it. Why so? What is the logical argument that we gave yesterday? In an inverted way, they're saying first look at what are the Upanishadic statements about the visible, apprehensible, physical, or subtle universe. Bhagavan says that only one tiny part of me I'm manifesting at the physical universe. So the 3/4 of the whole of Brahman is invisible, subtle, Swayam Pravaha. It lightens of itself, is self-luminous, it doesn't need the help of anybody. The physical universe is accessible to the sense organs, is subject to all the scientific observations and explorations we do, the physical cosmos. So the intellect, the mind that we have lights up this reality to us, declares that reality to us. But the Brahman itself doesn't require anybody to declare its presence, to ascertain, to provide evidence about its presence. It's Swayam Pravaha. That is by nature without any anksha. It doesn't have any parts. Tasmin Brahmani, in that Brahman, Nirang se, that is Angsha Rahita. Angsha Rahite Brahmani api Angsham Aropya. And then we are doing that Adhyaropana. We are imagining there is a part and a whole. Why? Because we have to make sense of the fact that the physical universe, which is available to us, is only a tiny part of the Brahman. It's not about proportional representation of Brahman as visible and invisible. We have discussed that yesterday. It's only about explaining to us the infinitude of the Brahman, and whatever is visible is just a tiny part of it. Kritsning se veti prachataha, does it cover? Is it only a tiny part of it, or the tiny part which is available to us as the physical universe is fully covered with Maya, and that itself is Brahman? There is nothing beyond it. Tad bhasaya uttaram brute shrutihi. The Shruti explains this by using the language of the student, as we discussed yesterday. Like the mother tries to answer the questions by the child she loves in the language of the child. How the child will understand, she answers. Srotru Hitaishini, because this Shruti Bhagavati, mother Upanishads, mother Vedas, she is trying to compassionately help us grapple with this confusing situation, and therefore adhyarupa apavadabhyam nisprapancham prapanchate. That is what again and again he said by none other than Bhagavan Shankara explains. Adhyarupa apavadabhyam. We will do adhyaropana. Why? Brahman per se, how do you talk about it? It's avang manasagochara. No words will reach there, no cognitive process will ever access the reality of the Brahman. How do we talk about it? We'll do adhyaropana. We'll have a lot of hypotheses. Then we'll reject one by one. And then enhance our ability to meditate deeper and deeper in this reality until a moment arrives when now there is no more any duality between us, the Brahman we are thinking about, and the process of thinking. There is only self-luminous reality. It's a very complex thing. So, as some Vedantists say, that you use the mind to drop the mind. You use logic, use shastras to abandon all that and drop all that, because ultimately all these become irrelevant at the ultimate moment of arrival of our self-understanding in its swarupa. There is no understanding of anything. It's pure consciousness, Chaitanya Swarupa. And that is what is mentioned. So, how does evam Maya prayojanam sadrishtandamaha sadati sadharmitayaha mayayaha. Now you see this Maya Shakti is there and it's creating this whole universe. And then you have that Sadavastu, which is Brahman, which is Nirvikara, which is Nishkala, which is Niravayava. We have heard these words. These are ways in which we are trying to make sense of the Sadavastu, the Brahman, which is pure, which is luminous, which is beyond all names and forms. Very difficult to meditate on. And therefore, how do we make sense of it? That he's explaining how Maya and its Sakti, the Maya Sakti, Brahman and its Maya Sakti, they work in the verse number 59. Sattvatvam ashrita sakti kalpayet sati vikriyaha varna vittigata vittavu chitram nanavidham tatha. There's a beautiful example which is being given here. Now, before I get into the Sanskrit and how to make sense of the words, let me explain to you in a very simple way so that when we look at the words, you find it much easier to understand. Now, there are 2-3 examples which are given in Vedanta. Okay, we have all heard about cave art. You have caves and the primitive communities who lived, the first artists. They use other sharp and hard stones to scratch the surface of the cave and create figurines or figures. Cave art, like you had Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Yeah, certain scripts also there. And then there is some art. Or let's imagine if you have been to Mahabalipuram. So it's a large stone in which things are carved out, right? Different mythical figures are carved out. There are certain places it's possible that on a stone wall, very beautiful, art forms are created by some people who are using maybe hammers and nails and stuff like that, sharp instruments, sculptures. They create a picture of Ramayana. You have Ramachandra, you have Ravana, you have Sita, Lakshman, everyone. There is a war going on. The Vedanta is asking, My friend, look at it again. What do you see? I see Ramayana, I see Ram, I see Lakshman, I see Sita, I see Ravana, I see Hanuman. He says, no, please tell me what do you see? He says, I see all these figures. He says, see closely and clearly. What you see is actually a rock surface. It's a rock surface on which these figures are carved out. And you are missing the rock surface, which is actually available to your eyes, the sense organs. You are instead focusing your attention on the forms. Now, in different kind of management training programs, they will show you a picture. And if you look at that picture, it's very confusing. Either you will see a lovely 12, 13, or 14-year-old girl, or you will see a 80-year-old old woman. Depends on how you're looking at it. Same lines are there. They want to test what's the mental frame you have, negative or positive. You're a kind of a bull or a bear. They want to find out. Now the Vedanti is giving an example here. Sattvatvam ashrita saktihi. This Maya is, where is it established? Is it independent? Does it have any swatantrata? Does it have any independence? In Vedanta, it doesn't have. In Sankhya, it has. In Tantra, it has. When in Vedanta, it's Brahmashrita. Because it doesn't have any independent existence, like the snake doesn't have any independent existence apart from the rope. That magical power through which this rope appears as a snake cannot exist independent of the rope. Sattvatvam ashrita saktihi kalpayat sati. Sati vikriyaha. All the vikaras and everything, the works of Maya are kalpita. That means fundamentally not real. The snake is an imaginary form and an imaginary name which we kind of superimpose or attach to the rope, which we cannot see, we don't want to see, or we are unable to see. Therefore, we describe and discuss how venomous is this large snake. How did it get into a house? It was an old rope lying over there. Now, the example. Banna vitigata vittau chitram nanavidham tatha. He's saying, look, I will explain to you how this whole Maya and Brahman and how the samsara appear. He's saying, just imagine Bhiti is a kind of a wall, right? So it's a large wall. It's a palace, or it's a university building, or it's a library, or it's a museum. On the wall, you have different colors are being used. And with these colors, somebody has painted. You have large wall paintings of a war. Maybe it's a garden and there are different kinds of flowers. And maybe there's a picture in which you have a rural marketplace, a haat, a fair. And then there are different human beings out there. And they are wearing different kind of clothes. That example is going to come at a later section of the same text. There is a piece of cloth, and then within that piece of cloth, somebody has done some painting. There's a girl who is wearing a red sari. So you have two saris there. Actually, the painting is made on a sari, but you see the color of the sari worn by a girl which is painted on that sari. Does it make sense? So first thing, look at three levels of reality. One is that there is a wall, and then different colors are used to draw a certain picture, a sketch, a painting. Actually, first, you should be seeing the wall. That is the obvious reality on which now certain colors are used. That's the second level of reality. And the combination of these colored lines and dots and stuff like that now gives rise to a new reality, as if it's a garden and the boys and girls are playing in it. And there's a temple, there's a lion playing with the children. All this is available. You can make it on using your AI. All these are quickly projected on what? On the wall. What is the fundamental reality? Is the wall. Do the colors have an independent existence? Can they exist on their own? No, they need a foundation. They need a platform. And what is that platform? The wall. And then these colors, using these colors, you have A third level of reality. What is the third level of reality? There are children, and then you can have a level of imagined reality. The boys and girls are talking to each other and making fun of each other. What is the conversation between them? So you have layers and layers of reality. Imagine on a bare foundation of the wall. Sattvatum asrita saktihi kalpayet sati vikraya sati in sat sadvastuni vikriyaha yatha varnaha vitigatta Vitto chitram nanavidham tatha. So this is the example, drishtanta. This is the drashtantika. Vitigattaha kuddiye liftaha. In the wall, kudya, liftaha. These are all painted. Rakta pitadayaha. You have red and yellow and different kinds of colors are being used. Nana vidham akritim vishesham. Different kind of colors and different kind of shapes are drawn on it. Vikriyaha. Bibidhataya kriyante iti vikriyaha. In different ways they are painted and it's spastam anyat. Okay. So this is how the sansara is being explained to us. Very difficult to accept for a very rational scientific mind, because he would all the time say, no, no, I see why the world will be like a dream, because what I see in a dream, you don't see that in a dream. But both you and me share this reality called a traffic jam, a hospital, a party. We share the relationship with a certain human being. Principal sees our mother, sees our sister. We share. This is an intersubjectively verifiable reality. Why should it be false? He's giving the example that intersubjectively verifiable reality of elephants and lions playing badminton on a wall as a result of painting is as real. It's intersubjective shared. Does that make that real? No, it doesn't make that real. What is real is the wall. Similarly, the Brahman remains real. The rest of the story that we talk about is essentially a projection. I hope we have done it. There's nothing much to it. Now, he is going to Adya Vikarasya Akasasya Vicharaha. What is the Tasmad va etasmad Akasha Sambhutaha? See, Akas is the first creation, Shukshma Bhuta. Then it will become Panchagrita and it will become Panchabhuta Atmaka. First, out of the Brahman, if you go to Chandogya Upanishad, Tat Tejo Astrijata, he leaves out the Vayu and Akasa. He starts with the physically available Panchabhutas. So he talks about Teja and Av and Prithvi. Fire, water, and earth. These are physically available to the eyes. Air is not available, Akasa is not available. So he leaves them out. Straightway goes in. There's a bit of debate in the Brahma Sutra whether we should start the creation with Akasha or we'll start with Teja. And Shankaracharya dismisses that kind of a logical questioning, saying not very relevant. The truth of the matter is not in creation, but to help us understand that the creation is essentially a story. The creation is not ultimately real. What is ultimately real is what is available to us as a creation. What is beyond this phenomenal reality. That is Paramartha Satya. What is phenomenal reality? Okay, it's a phenomenal truth. Vyavaharika Satya. Okay, so we are going to the verse number 60, and he's explaining. If there's any additional commentary on the 59, let me see if there's anything interesting that I would like to share with. Is there anything? Yeah, you see, there is one thing I would like to share with you, that the Vaishnavas, Ramanujacharya and others, who believe that Brahman actually manifests as samsara. The samsara is real. The Advaita Vedantins do not go that path. There are different problems. A lot of people can ask this question. If God is creating the samsara, when we are unhappy, we are sad, everyone is Brahman. So God is also unhappy. And second thing, they will say, if God has created all of us, who is responsible for the crimes we do? God should be punished because he brought these criminals on earth. A lot of childish and stupid questions are raised because at a very surface level, these are relevant questions. But if you go deeper into it, all of them have been answered in Vedanta. Bhagavan has answered in Bhagavad Gita. I'm not touched by these papas and punyas because apparently these are all papa and punya, and it's because of your karma, and you are anyway going to suffer. But ultimately, the sublime, the substratum, which is beyond all this, is not touched by all this. It's like a film screen on which you are seeing a horror movie doesn't get frightened. It's not affected by horror. And then it's followed by a romantic movie. The wall is not affected by the love between the hero and the heroine. And then you have a movie of violence and vengeance and revolution or whatever. The crime and the violence doesn't affect the wall. Similarly, the Brahman is everywhere, is the cause of everyone. Like without the wall, the film isn't possible. So the wall remains the cause of the film, and yet it doesn't hold any responsibility. Why should we worship God at all? That question also Bhagavan has answered in Bhagavad Gita. But we cannot discuss everything in these couple of slokas. All of these will come one by one when we are moving forward while doing this Panchadashi, because it's a very profound Prakarana Grantha in Advaita Vedanta. So what is saying? Nama Rupatmakan Vikriya Visheshan Ghatapatadi Jagad Bhedana Kalpayati. All this, like in earth, we imagine different physical shapes. Similarly, in Brahman, we are imagining these are all projections. This न तो ब्रह्मणः वास्तविक परिणामः न विकारः न परिवर्तनम. So these are neither material transformation of the Brahman, nor is it a kind of a change in the Brahman. Brahman doesn't undergo any change. There is no transformation. All these are imaginations. Why? Brahma tu sakhi bhutam. It's that universal witness. Upadhi pratibimbavat avikaram eva. So, it is that because of which the rope appears like a snake. It's just an imagination. It's just a projection. The more and more we realize, we find it easier to realize when we get some news that you find that somebody who was a great author or a writer or a film star passed away. Imagine for the guy who was leaving this place, what is the fundamental validity of all these human experience? He is left, right? We don't know where he goes. This is essentially something which captures our imagination. Per se, none of it is fundamentally true. It wasn't there in the beginning, it's not going to be there. Even though, so in a way, both Advaita, Vedanta, and Buddhists have a deeper insight than what the realists are atheistic. There are a lot of realists. They will tell you a story about the fundamental truth of this creation, the physical universe. Both the Advaita Vedantins and Buddhists will try to take your attention away from it, saying, come on, why don't you rise a little above? These are capturing your attention, not fundamentally real. Okay? Tathaiva Brahma yathavat avikari maya upadhi nimittam jagadavaichityam upalabhyade. So all this is kind of appearing and we accept and we deal with it. By end of the day, these are not fundamentally real. Now let's go to the first thing, that adya vikara. Okay, what is that? Look at this sloka. Adya vikara akashaha सोबकाश स्वरूपवान आकाशोस्तीति सतत्वम आकाशेप्य अनुगच्छति. यहाँ पे that tata, that is kind of a printing error. Adya vikaraha akashaha. So the visarga is not visible because it's followed by a shwara varna, and then it has become okara. In Vyakarana we will deal with all this. Adyaha vikaraha akashaha. The first vikara of Brahman. Remember, no vikara is real. We are talking about vivarta parivartana, vivarta parinama, no real parinama, projected transformation. So what is the first vikara which appears in Brahman? Akasha. How does it appear? Because of adhyasa. What does it mean? It's a projection. It's a adhyasa. Adya vikara akasha. And what is that? Saha akasha avakasa swarupavan. It has some dharma. What is its essential nature? Avakasa swarupavan. What is avakasha? So you have this hand here. If I move this hand can come. They both cannot coexist in one place. Avakasa, they displace some space. They occupy some space. Similarly, the akasha is providing you that space through which you have a lot of physical entities making movements. That is the avakasha swarupa man. It doesn't ban movement of anything. It exists, but other things can also coexist with it. There's no fight between akasha and my hand. My hand has space. Akasha has space. The space of my hand and space of akasha, there is no fight between the two. Avakasha swarupavan. However, the Nyayikas believe that satta, dravya, guna, karma. So these are these three entities, and they all have satta dharma. Dravya, guna, and a karma. Okay. Guna and a karma can be there in dravya, but satta is there in all of them. Satta is a jati, it's a samanya. It's a universal quality. It's one of the universal satta, existence. Existence is a quality or an attribute which is there in dravya, all the entities, guna, qualities, and a karma, activities. There is running happens. There is a horse race, right? So horse race is you're associating. There is a pen. Pen is isness is associated with pen, and guna. The red color is it's full of red color. The garden is full of blue color, right? So you're associating. There is a lot of goodness in that person. Isness is associated. That satta is referred to as a dharma, as a quality, as an attribute of what? Dravya, guna, and a karma. That is nyaya. Vedanta twists the story. Vedanta says you are joking. What came first? It's the clay which comes first, or you have the pot which comes first. Can you have a pot without clay? No. You have mritsatve ghadasattvam. First you have clay, and then you can make a pot. So the clay assumes the form of the pot. Is this sadavastu, the Brahman, that satta swarupa, the isness, that assumes the form of everything else. And this is beautifully explained if you want to understand it in Sankara Bhashya of the 16th sloka of Bhagavad Gita. Right? Na sato vidyate bhava, na bhavo vidyate satha. The sat can never ever be non-existent. And na sato, which is asat, na sato vidyate bhavaha, it can never assume existence if it's asat. And there is a beautiful explanation. What is that isness? What is that sadvastu? And what is the vyavichari? All the qualities, names and forms. They would be here, they would not be here. What is going to be there all the time is that satta. And that is Brahman. That is ultimately referred to as prakashavan. That is Brahman. So he's saying akaso astiti sa satatvam akasepi anugachati. Sat tattvam. Sat tattvam is actually bhava of the sadvastu. It's imagined as if it belongs to the akasha. Because of what? Because of faulty understanding, a wrong cognitive assumption about the nature of akasha. Brahman is, akasha is, yeah, we say that. Because we do some kind of adhyasa, some kind of superimposition. He will explain it one by one. Mayayaha sadvastuni kalpitanam vikaranam madhye adyaha pratham vikara akasha. Is a result of Maya's game. Sadvastuni, Brahmani in Brahman. Kalpitanam vikaranam, all kinds of vikaras are imagined in Brahman. Madhye adyaha prathama vikaraha. Like for example, if you want to carve out Rama, Lakshmana, Sita and everything, you have to make some platform, right? on which you will place the Hanuman, everything. So some kind of few lines you will draw. That is the Adya Vikara. Similarly, Akasha is the Adya Vikara. Madhya Adyaha Prasma Vikara Akashaha. Why so? He's saying, look at the Taitriya Shruti. Atmanaha Akasha Sambhudaha. Out of Brahman came Akasha, Taitriya, second chapter, the first sloka. Shruti says, Nama Rupa Sahitatvam Eva Vikaratvam. What is Vikara? It's a beautiful definition is given. Anything which has name and form is Vikaravan. Vikar, nothing else. Vacharambhan Vikaranamadheyam Ritika Ityevam Satyam. It's all, the clay is the truth. Gold is the reality. Golden necklace, golden chain. That's how you say this. It's gold. You cannot have a necklace without gold. You cannot have a pot without clay. Mritika ityevam satyam. Actually, satya is that mritika, the clay. That is the reality. Names and forms are imaginations. Similarly, saying that is vikaratvam. Shishto prathama karyasya akasa iti namaha. What is the first product of sadavastu? First comes space, then you can imagine about anything else. And then comes Vayu, then comes Agni, then comes Jala, Ava, and then it comes Prithvi. Sa Avakasa Swarupavan, that Akasha is actually Avakasa Swarupavan. Its essential nature is that space. It creates that spaciousness. Avakasa eva tasya swarupam murta dravyanam avakasa dhatitvat. So all the things which are moving, anything which is moving, murta dravya. So you have to have space for it to move. Avakasa dhatitvat. Dravyandara sthiti praveso yogyata sampadaka daisikaha cha avakashaha. That is what I'm saying. You have X, you can replace it with Y, and you have movements, you have so many cars and buses going here and there on a bridge, looking at how much space it has. There is a lot of regulation as to how the flights are, the aircraft are moving, how trains are moving. We are regulating their movement. The one thing which is sure is that there is space. It doesn't interfere with anything. It allows everything. There could be an accident because of two trains colliding or two aircraft colliding, but there will be no accident because Akasa collides with anything. No. Akasasya satkaryatvam sopapattikam aha is giving you some logic that it is a product of Sat, is the Brahman. Akaso astiti sattattvam sattarupa dharma akase api anugacchati. However, we stupid guys, even though it's made out of the Sadbrahma, we attribute Sattatva, we attribute Satta Dharma to Akasha. No, it's actually a product of Satta. That Satta has easiness. That is ultimate Brahman. The Akasha is allowed to have Satta Dharma by the Nyayayikas, but that's an attribution. That's not real. Sattarupa dharma akasepi anugacchati adhyasate. So it's actually an imposition yavat. Sataha akase api anushyitatvat. So because he's saying Sataha akasa api. You see, if you look at Sutriya Maniganya Iva, Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita, the whole physical universe, I'm the one which is holding it together. Like you have that tiny thread which is holding together diamonds or in a necklace or flowers in a garland. Is that tiny thread, isn't it? Similarly, is that all-pervading reality called the Brahman, where everything is projected. What is holding together Rama, Ravana, Sita, Hanuman, or anyone which are carved out on a platform? The platform is holding them together. They don't have any independent existence. These are pictures carved out on a certain canvas, a certain platform. Similarly, this whole sansara is carved out on the Brahman, and therefore the Brahman is holding them together. So there are beautiful ways in which. So how do we make sense of it? As a result of Maya, sadvastuni kalpiteshu vikareshu, what is the first vikara? Akasha. As a result of Maya, we are imagining all kinds of things. And then sometimes we say akasha asti, there is akasha. And then because of this sentence, you are now attributing sattva dharma, right? And you are saying it is there. Saiva sattva dharma akase pe anugacchati brahmana satayaha adhyasarupena. So whenever you are saying akasa asti, the astiness, the isness that we associate with the akasa is in fact the swadharma Brahman. We are attributing it. Okay? Because the Brahman directly itself, Sakshat Akara Vikalpa Rahita. It doesn't have any shape, it doesn't have any alternatives. San api akasha avakasa swarupaha avakasaha eva asya mukhya dharmaha murta drabyanam satmyaha pravesadatutvam karoti sa eva avakasha, because it allows that we have already discussed it. Therefore, though akasa maika vikaraha, it's essentially is not a fundamental transformation of the Brahman. Maika is a projection, like the snake is a projection of the rope. Maika vikaraha, even then, akasa asti vyavaharasya adhara. What is the foundation of this statement? Akasa exists, there is a sky. The isness that we associate with the akasha or the sky, where from it comes. That isness is not a swatantra satta which we can attribute to akasha. Please discard the abstract words which you are using. There is akasa, we say. There is a pen, there is a pencil. What Vedanta says, in fact, akasa is an appendage on isness. Akasa is held together by Brahman. Akasa is not holding Brahman, but that's how it appears. This satta dharma we are attributing to akasa, whereas satta dharma is actually associated with the Brahman, that is his swarupa. Akasa is projection, first byproduct, maika byproduct. Okay, so this particular pratiti, this kind of a perception that akasa exists. So he's saying, look, this is essentially a adhyasa, superimposition. Atasmin tadabuddhi. What is not there, you are thinking. So you have gone to a book fair, and your daughter has examination. All fathers are very, very over concerned about their daughters. Then you have gone to that book exhibition. Tomorrow is your daughter's interview or an examination. And suddenly you see a girl who is wearing the same kind of dress, same kind of haircut, and she is browsing books, and you really get upset. And you go and tap the back of that girl and say, hey, what the hell are you doing here? She turns back, yes, uncle, how can I help you? Oh, it's someone else's. Then you apologize. What did you do first? You did adhyasa. The qualities, there is some similarity: haircut, dress, shape. And then you superimpose those qualities of your daughter and this girl, who is someone else's daughter or sister or whatever. And then you are angry. Tomorrow is your examination. What are you doing at this book fair? And you tap at her back and say, what's going on? The exam got postponed. She says, which exam, sir? And you are back to square one. You apologize. The Brahman is what which has satta dharma. The akasha doesn't have, independently, it doesn't have satta dharma. It's superimposed on it because it's part of, it's like the personal assistant of a minister behaving like a minister. Yeah, it happens. Similarly, the akasa, we treat it as if it has, directly it has this satta dharma. Let's go to the next verse. These are very simple ones, not very difficult. Akasya karyakarna dharmau visadayati ek iti. So in the akasa, what is karya and karana? What is karana? Karana is Brahman. And what is karya? First vikara is akasa. And then he's saying, look here, whenever you have a karana and you have a karya, the karana dharma will be there in the karya. The dad's facial features will be there in the son, isn't it? And then the son marries some other girl. The grandson then assumes some qualities of the grandfather through the father, and then through the mother, a few more qualities. No? So it will have its own combination. Few inherited qualities, and then some which appear in it. Okay? So Akasa is the first vikara of Brahman. Therefore, it should have the qualities of Brahman, which is Satta Dharma. Then it has its own Swabhav, which is Avakasha Dharmavan. The Avakasha Swarupa, which is Swadharma. What is inherited guna? Inherited guna or dharma is that Satta Dharma. That's what is explained. Very simple, not very difficult. Though linguistically it can be a little, एक स्वभावं तत्तत्त्वम् आकाशो द्विस्वभावकः नावकाशः सति व्योम्नि स चेशोऽपि द्वयं स्थितम् एक स्वभावं सत्तत्वम्. Brahman is having eka swabhava. What is that? Sat tattvam. That satta dharma is the only dharma which Brahman has. Why? It doesn't have any name and forms. It exists. That's the only dharma you can imagine in the Brahman. There is what? Don't describe. Don't go that way. No names and forms. That pure isness. That's all you can talk about. Akasa dvi swabhavakam. Akasa, you have two qualities. First, the karana dharma will come, then its own swabhava will come. What are these? Na avakasaha sati. Sati brahmani avakasaha dharmo na. This quality, avakasha dharma, doesn't exist in Brahman. Vyomni, in Akasa it is there. Sacha eshopi dvayam sthitam. So in the Akasa, what do you have? You have the Satta Dharma inherited from the Sadvastu, from where Akasa is the first Vikara, is the Karya, is the product, is a consequence, is a certain projected reality, and then its own Swadharma, which is Avakasha Dharma. Done. So in Akasa, you have two Dharmas, Avakasha Dharma and Sadharma, Sattattvam. In Brahman, you have only one Tattva. What is that? Sattattvam. Only Satta Dharma is there. That is what is now going to be explained to us in several words in the commentary. Sattvam sadabhava eka swabhavam sattarupa eka dharmakam. Sattarupata, isness, is the only quality or attribute. Actually, quality is a word. Absolute doesn't apply to, because the lack of any other alternative, I'm just using the word quality. Is essentially a dharma you associate with. Brahman has no predicates. Akasa dvisvabhavakaha, it has two attributes. What are they? Sati, that means sadvastuni avakaso dharma na vidyate. Avakasa dharma is associated with akasa, doesn't happen to Brahman. Vyomni sat, satta, in the akasa, you have that sad dharma satta. Esho api avakasa gunasya dvayam api sthitam. Then you have, in addition to that, you also have avakasha dharma. Two dharmas are there. Satkaryatva dharma vishishta avakasa datritvam akasasya. So you have, now one is becomes a definition, you have one adjective and then one noun. Sat karyatva, sat Brahman, karyatva, consequence of the Brahman, karyatva dharma, that is one. I am the son of Mr. X, that is one dharma I have, that is my visheshana, that is my adjective, vishishta. Avakasa datritvam, that's my dharma, I give that avakasha. Avakasa datritvam, I allow other things to move in me. That is my dharma. I am the son of Mr. X, and then I have these qualities. Swarupam ityuktam bhavati, that is how we must make sense of akasa. Evam akasa vayu tejo abhuvam. All Panchabhutas is bringing. Akasha dharma satta will be there in, Brahma dharma satta will be there in Akasha. First, let's say this is Akasha. And from Akasha, you have Akasha Vayu. So you have Vayu. Vayu will have what? Sat dharma, satta will be there. Akasha dharma, okay. Then Sabda Gunakam, you know that Sabda sound will be there. And then in Vayu, what do you have? Sparsha. And then out of Vayu, you have Agni. Then Agni will have what? What is his own Swadharma? Teja. So it will have Teja, Sparsha, and then Savada in addition to Satta Dharma. And then out of that particular fire comes water. So what does it have? It has a Rasha, additional quality. And then all three plus one. And then finally Prithvi. Prithvi is the fifth one in Panchabhuta. So it will have all five qualities plus Satta Dharma. So it has six qualities. Karya qualities will be Karana qualities will always in Karana. So the last one will take the burden of all the qualities. Okay. So that is how he's saying, explaining. Bhuvam purva purvasya uttara uttara karana bhutatvad. Later one is the outcome of the earlier one. So last one will be the child is carrying a RNA or DNA of all five of them above it. Uttaruttaro asmin purva purva karanasya guna sankramanam uttara granthe pradarshitatam. He's saying, I will explain to you going forward how the earlier cause will have its qualities ingrained in the consequence which follows it. Pratyekam tesham swadharmasya apihitaha. And each of them will have their own swadharmas. Evam ete kramashaha dvi, three, chatur, pancha, sat swabhavaka bhavanti. The first one is having satta dharma only. Which one? Sat swabhava, Brahman. Then Vishwabhava, Akasa. Three Swabhava, you have Vayu. Chatur Swabhava, you have Agni. Pancha Swabhava, you have the Jala, Ava. And then Sad Swabhava, you will have Prithvi. That is how it's explaining. It's very clear. We can move forward. Akasa Nishta Sabda Gunakam Adayapi Sadakasayor, Sad and Akasa, Sadakasayor. Eka dvitva swabhavatvam eva ityaha yad va iti. Now, he's explaining the same thing in more words. Yad va pratidhvani vyomno guno nasau satikshate vyomni do sadhvani tena sadekam dviginam vyad. How Akasa has two attributes and you are reserving only one attribute for Sadvastu, Brahman? Explain to me. The Nyayika student will have a lot of questions and the Vedanti teacher has to explain. Therefore, when the Nyaya student asks these questions, the Vedanti explains Yadava Pratidhvanihi Vyomnoha Gunaha. Sound stays in Akasha. Without Akasha, you wouldn't have any sound. You know, as students of science, you can have that sound requires a medium. Okay? And therefore, there's a lot of discussion. The sounds, because there are constant explosions going on in the sun, but we don't hear it. Why? Because there's no medium to carry the sound to us. We only see the light, we get the heat. But if you think about it deeply, sound are essentially waves, aren't they? So where do they move? Where do they stay? The sound waves may be not accessible through our sense organs or the kinds of instruments that we prepare, but waves require space to move. In that sense, they say that you can say that obviously you can say they were not as sophisticated as the current physicists. They don't distinguish between space and space with some invisible subtle medium, right? They didn't make that they didn't make that kind of a distinction. You can say that absolutely. But then now we are using satellites, and satellites are in space, and then through cell phones, everything you're having connectivity through these satellites. I don't have a deep understanding of the physics involved in it, but these waves which are emanated, they alter the frequencies and they go and get reflected from the lights, and then they come and then they get reinterpreted through sophisticated instruments, and then that comes to our cell phone, and then they become audible to our naked ears. So they're saying that Akasha, you cannot see through your sense organs. You can do Anumana. Because sound is coming and sound stays in Akasha. They had a very deep insight into how the ears function. They are saying there's nothing called ear. Ear is essentially space within that, Karna Saskuli. You have that tiny space. Of course, the physicist, we have done a lot of study as to how there is something which behaves like a diaphragm, and the sound comes, it interprets, sends the signals to the brain. That's how we are interpreting and hearing. But they were just basically thinking that this is also space. The ear is ear space, and you have the Mahakasha, and the sound is coming. And they had a lot of understanding of how the sound waves, Bichi Vallari Nyaya, they had a lot of understanding, sophisticated understanding, but not as detailed as you would have them in physics, in later day physicists who are able to explore further into it. But very briefly, Yadva Pratidvanihi Vyomna Gunaha Na Asau Sati Ichyate. You can see there is a Dirghikara. In Sat, you don't see this Pratidvani quality, sound. It doesn't abide in the Brahman. Everything abides in the Brahman, therefore it abides in the Brahman, but ultimately this is not an attribute associated with the Brahman. Vyomni do sad dhvani. You can look at this dirghayikara. That satta, dharma, and then dhvani, pratidhvani. Together they stay. Where? Vyoman, in Akasha. Tena sad ekam. And that's how the Brahman has only one dharma, which is satta dharma. Dvigunam, vyada. Vyada is Akasha. It has two qualities. He's explaining. It's very simple. If you keep aside the elaboration which would be there in their language. Yadava iti prakaranantina vyadaha dvaigunam darshayati. In another way, he's explaining how the akasa's two qualities and what are they? Pratidvanihi shabda vyomnoha gunaha. The sound is there in akasha, in the space, in akas, in the sky. Also pratidvanihi sati na ichyate vyomni sadvani sattacha dhvanisha do gunam. The sound doesn't, you can't associate the sound as a dharma of the Brahman, but you can say that it stays in Akasha, Satta Dharma also stays, that's how it has two attributes. Tena karanena sad ekam, eka swabhavakam. The Brahman has only one swabhava, Satta Dharmi. Satta Dharma is the only dharma you can associate with the Brahman. Vyadviganam dvishwabhavaha, dviswabhavakam. It has two qualities or two dharmas, attributes. One is that ability to hold sound, the other one is, or permit sound waves to move. The other one is that it also has the satta dharma, it exists. Sat karyatve, because it's a product of the Brahman. Sati avakasa datritvam yadava sabda gunakatvam akasasya swarupamiti samparnam. So sabda gunakatvam, that soundness, it gives a platform for sound waves to move. That is the swarupa, that is the quality of akasha. Sabda gunakam akasamiti nyaya nyaya naya, the signs of these nyaya philosophers. Nyaya naya prasiddham akasa lakyanam tutasya drabya itara vibhajaka dharma pratipadaka matram natu tat swarupa pradarshakam iti avadheyam. Now he strikes that Vedantic conclusion at the end. Itara dravya vibhajakam. In order to distinguish akasa from other bhutas, you are saying sabda gunakam akasha. Doesn't mean there is a swatantra dharma of satta or any of these. He's saying, look, just trying to say. Tat swarupa pradarshakam. No, because first thing, swarupa is associated with what? Which is nitya, which is ultimately there. Okay. Now the next question would come. No, akasa asid. Some people say there was akasha, there is sky. Look up, you can see the sky. Asid ityatra satta dharma vishishta akasha. Therefore, satta dharma exists in akasha. Satta dharmavan akasha. That kind of a way in which we can explain that akasha exists. Existence is one attribute we can associate with akasha. इति अर्थे सद आकाशयोर धर्म धर्मी भाव आपत्ते असंगति एव स्यात्. There will be some logical incongruity. What is that? Dharma dharmi. What is the dharma? Satta dharma. Actually, Brahman is the dharmi. Akasa is one attribute associated with the Brahman. It is a product of the Brahman. But we twist it, and that is what's going to be explained to us. Akasasya satkaryatve sati. When akasa is a product of the Brahman, is satkarya. Satkarya means satah karya. Sat is the Brahman, sadavastu. So satkaryatve sati katham karanasya karya dharmatvam. how the Karana will have Karya Dharmatvam. Karanasya Karya Dharmatvam itasankhya aha. Okay, Katham Karanasya Karya Dharmatvam. Karana will have Karana Dharma. Karya will have Karya Dharma. Karana will have Karana Dharma. The son will have a few qualities of the father. The father will not have qualities of the son. No. But I tell you, I just want to alert you that if you get into modern physics, now there are new theories coming up. Does the future determine our past? There is a new concept. It's called retrofactuality. It's possible that the futures which are coming are influencing the past. Anyway, we are not getting into it. These are in the realm of speculation by the smartest minds. We're not going there. Generally, in very simple ways, the cause will have a few markers of it present in the consequence. The consequence cannot retroactively influence the qualities of the cause. That's all they're trying to say. Karanasya karya dharmatum itasankhya aha ya iti. या शक्ति ही कल्पयेद व्योम सासद व्योमनर अभिन्नताम आपाद्य धर्म धर्मित्वम व्यत्ययेन बकल्पयेत. He's saying, look, vyatyaya means viparita kramena. There's a kind of a confused understanding there. That is how ya sakti hi, ya maya sakti hi kalpayet vyoma. That maya sakti which makes acceptance of akasa as a real physical reality acceptable to us through that maya sakti. Sa maya sakti sad vyomnoho avinnatam apadya. First, it accepts, it creates in our minds non-difference between akasha and Brahman. How do you attribute easiness to akasha? How do you say akasa has swatantra dharmakal easiness? First, we confuse between father and son. Okay? Once we confuse, dharma dharmitvam vyatyayena avakalpayet. First, the son is actually wearing the shirt of his father, and he is playing cricket, or he's playing with a sword, and his father was actually a great fighter. And then you see his father on a particular religious fair. He is also participating in a ritual display of the skills of wielding the sword. You know what you say? He has learnt it from his son. Actually, the son has learnt everything from the father, but you had never seen the father. So you see, the father has learnt everything from the son. So what is Maya's game here? The Maya first creates as if Brahman and its work, which is Akasa, are the one and the same thing. Abhinnavam apadya, first that is. Right? The first vikshepa happens there. Then dharma dharmitvam. One is dharma, another is dharmi. Dharmi is actually akasha. Akasha is a dharma superimposed on the Brahman, but we twist it and we say akasha satta dharma. Satta is a dharma. Satta is the dharmi. Sadavastu is the dharmi. This akasha and everything are attributes superimposed on the Brahman. We twist it. Akasa asit. That is what he's explaining. Vyatyayena brahmena. In a twisted way, abakalpaye, that is how we are making sense of it. Ya maya sakti vyoma kalpayet tasya aropayati sha eva sakti sa maya sakti sad vyomnoho avinnatam tadatmyam apadya. First there is tadatmya adhyasa. Prathamam sampadya, first sameness of Akasha and Brahman. It says tayor eva. Anantaram, next one, Vaiparityena, Vityena means Vaiparityena, Dharmadharitvam, Dharmasya Akasasya, Dharmi Bhavam sa Vakalpayet. Akasa is a Dharma attribute superimposed on Akasha. Akasa appears as real. Actually, Brahman is real. We twist it. Ataha Akasasya Sadharmitvam Avagamyate. Then we say Akasasit. Akasa is, the sky exists. This is a little philosophically tricky, and we'll take it forward in our next class. We'll just hit the timeline, we'll stop here, and we'll look at it in our next class. Any questions? please feel free to put it in the group, and I'll come back with responses in the next class. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hare Om. That's it. Thank you, everyone.